Hey everyone, it's Kim and welcome back to Bookmarks and Breadsticks. Welcome back to Bookmarks and Breadsticks. If you're new to my channel, I focus on everything in the food writing space. That's everything from food chef memoirs, food history, culinary nonfiction, and general reference and the food industry along with the agriculture and environmental industries. If you're new, you're here for a great video. This is my favorite books of 2021. Now it's mid-December. There is a good chance I'm going to read one more amazing book this month, especially because I have a lot of books I'm in the middle of reading, but I picked 9. Imagine there's a mystery 10th for that other book. Now these are not going to be any particular order. I did go through on my story graph to look through month by month. So far as of filming this today, I have read 88 books this year. That's a lot of books. So to help me narrow down the pile, I actually went month by month in my Storygraph app and looked for what was my favorite book of each month. Now, I am more than likely going to look at this pile of books and do them out of order because I don't really plan that way. That's not who I am. But I will have to say that some of my favorite books, I knew which book was going to be my favorite book of this year. From the minute I read it, essentially nothing topped it. But I was really excited to go back and go, yeah, I really did love reading that book. I also, this was a big year for me, I had a bunch of buddy reads this year that I was super excited to have. So it was really fun to look back and go, wow, I read a lot of really good books. In general, I have read 70% nonfiction this year and 30% fiction. I am predominantly a nonfiction reader. That is my happy place, but I am really excited to see fiction get up to 30%. Like, that is a big deal for me. My goal is to get closer to 60-40, and that seems to be trending the right way, especially as I try to expand my food reading experience in the fiction genres, including fiction, young adult, and romance. I'm now expanding the Read It and Eat Blind Date program to include food murder mysteries, graphic novels, and middle grade. So by helping to expand my business, I have to read a lot more in these other spaces to feel confident recommending these books to you guys. I also did launch that coffee chat series where I do little under 10-minute reviews of some of the fiction and foodie books I am reading. But back to the top 2021 books I read this year. 2 of them are from one of my favorite authors, which is Mark Kerlansky. I read this year, back in January, Salt. This is a world history of salt. There is not much more else to say to describe this, but I loved this. Now, it is a little bit of a longer book. It's very dense. I did do a book duo comparing the book Salt to the book Pepper, which I will link in the cards and down below. But this is one of those foundational books that just makes me go, yes, do I love nonfiction, and yes, do I love learning about food, because I loved learning how important this book was, or how important salt was to the world. The other Mark Kerlansky book I read this year is Birdseye, The Adventure of a Curious Man, also by Mark Kerlansky. Birdseye is the story of Mr. Birdseye. You might think of Birdseye frozen food products. Well, Birdseye is the guy who helped us understand how to reimagine the everyday miracle of frozen food with actually good nutrition. So I'll give you a little bit more context on this one because you might not know who Birdseye is. While working as a fur trapper in Labrador, Canada, Clarence Birdseye encountered an age-old problem: unappealing, unhealthy food. However, he observed that fresh fish frozen outside in the Arctic winds maintained their integrity after thawing. As a result, he developed his patented freezing process and started the company that still bears his name. Birdseye forever changed the way we preserve, store, and distribute food and the way we eat. I really liked this book. It is on the shorter side too. It is just a little bit over 200 pages, so it's a very, very easy read to go through. But I just found it so fascinating, and I don't know if this is a subgenre, but I love the inventor story. I love how people just saw problems in the world with food and found ways to fix them. Okay, 2 books in, now let's move on. Another book that I read this year was actually one of my first buddy reads, and I read Famous Nathan by Lord Handwerker and Gil Reville. And this is all about the history of Nathan's hot dogs. I actually read this with Danny over at Spinelli Speaks. So this book, first off, I was just so excited to have a buddy read. So the book is special to me for those kinds of sentimental reasons. I love that Danny and I could connect, and we talked on Voxer and generally enjoyed the book. And then in second, I enjoyed reading the book. I grew up on Long Island. I didn't go to Coney Island until I was in college and finally got to have like a Nathan's hot dog at the boardwalk. But like Nathan's hot dogs were around, they were part of my childhood, and I found the story so interesting, and the drama about family and wanting to make your mark when the sons inherited the business. This was also a nice, easy breezy read for a food writing book. So unlike like Kerlansky's books can be very, very dense. I'm not selling them very well. I'm sorry. Mark Kerlansky's books are historical and very informative and thoroughly researched. And he did do more of a biography with Birdseye. I would put Famous Nathan's in that kind of inventor narrative, the biography, the food memoir. It's not really food memoir because it's written by the grandson. Nathan is really one of the to me, founding fathers of American cuisine. Nathan's hot dogs are universal. There is a hot dog eating contest every year sans COVID. So I just thought this was a really nice delight to read. And this is a nice approachable way to get into food writing, is to pick a food or an item that people recognize and know, and then go, hey, did you ever want to learn more about it? So I really enjoyed it. And again, it was the first buddy read I ever had. So super love that. And hi, Danny. Another book I really loved is High on the Hog, A Culinary Journey from Africa to America by Dr. Jessica B. Harris. Dr. Harris is the 2020 James Beard Lifetime Achievement Award winner. And she is a cookbook author and a culinary historian with a lifetime of knowledge and mass for storytelling. And she weaves this narrative about food and food waves that begin in Africa, that come across the Atlantic slave route, and eventually are flowered across the American continent. What I love about Dr. Harris is, well, first off, I love many things about Dr. Harris, but she is such an eloquent speaker and very approachable. I love that Dr. Harris narrates all of her own books, but there's such a rich appreciation for the impact African Americans and Africans have had on United States and American cuisine. And not in just a fried chicken and grits way. Like, no, she will push and she digs and she really tells these captivating stories. Dr. Harris's book was also adapted into a Netflix series called High on the Hog, which is, I'm only a couple episodes in because they are so poignant and impactful. I plan on releasing a video, hopefully by the end of this month, if not early January, of 2021 TV shows and food series I think you should watch, and here are the books you should read with them. Like, if you like this, try this, so that you get additional context. When that show was adapted, it's I believe the first show in terms of food storytelling that focuses specifically on the Black experience, the African experience, and the Atlantic slave trade, and it's the foodways and diaspora. And I was just so proud to see that happen. Even on Chef's Table, for example, you get a diverse amount of chefs, but still to this day, chefs are predominantly white and male. So to have a show come out of Dr. Harris's book was such a victory for culinary exposure and culinary learning. And I really, really recommend you read High on the Hog. Also, if you love audiobooks, Dr. Harris narrates this herself, and it's fantastic. So the rest of these books are actually books that surprised me. I just didn't think I was going to. They just blew my socks off. A lot of these, I find that a lot of my favorite books actually came towards the earlier half of this year and became very hard to beat. I really enjoyed The Monk of Mocha by Dave Eggers. I have a full review of this on my channel, but The Monk of Mocha is a true story of a young Yemeni American man raised in San Francisco who dreams of resurrecting the ancient art of Yemeni coffee, but finds himself trapped in Sana'a by the Civil War. This is a really brave and amazing story. There has been some controversy about this founder and some of his practices. Dave Eggers, I believe, is actually the guy who wrote the book The Circle. I think it was The Circle. What was that the book that was made into a movie that Emma Watson starred in? I think it was called The Circle. Anyway, I really loved this book. It was completely a cover buy for pretty obvious reasons since it's so dang pretty. But it was just such a story, such a journey. This guy gets into so many horrifically harried situations and comes out fine. I was rooting for him the whole time. Next up is actually a book I received from a Book Olive when we did, from a Book Olive, when we did our book exchange in the summer. I'll link that full video up and below. And it is Mastering the Art of Soviet Cooking, a memoir of food and longing by Anya von Bremzen. Excuse me. Ooh, almost threw the book off the screen too. So this is about a young woman named Anya who grew up in Moscow and then eventually comes to America. And she's living during the time of Lenin and then comes to America. And I think what I love the most about this book, also you've noticed it's another memoir. I think one of the most interesting things about this book, and I forget where it is in the book, but can you long and miss food? Like, can you long and miss for food you've never actually had? And I think that was something very powerful about this. And also how political repression or political opinions really impacted the way Anya grew up eating food. And Mastering the Art of Soviet Cooking helped her get back to her roots. And it was very powerful, and it was also, I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't like, oh, my mom died and now I want to reconnect with my roots. It was much more this fragmented life in childhood where she felt that had very, very unique feelings about food. And some of it was food that she had never even eaten before, but knew that she had missed out on or was deprived of. And I thought it was a very beautiful book. And I was so glad that Olive sent it to me. Okay, we're 6 books in. So right now you have like 3 in the food history, food world history, travel kind of world. And then you have 3 that fall into the memoir and biography area. The next book up, I would put somewhere in between of memoir and more travelogue, and that is The Milk Lady of Bangalore. This is by Shobha Narayan, and I really loved this book. So first off, yes, I'm going to say that I really loved every book I'm talking about, so pardon my lack of eloquent speech. But Shobha moves to India with her husband and 2 daughters after many years in the United States. And it's really about this woman who lives in a wealth penthouse. She can afford cleaners and nannies and a chauffeur, and meanwhile befriends quite literally the milk lady across the street who would bring her cows and provide fresh milk. And all of these expats would line up every morning to get this fresh, raw, unpasteurized milk. And it was about their relationship. And this was a book I found on a shelf. No one recommended it to me. And I think that's sometimes what I love about books and bookstores is the magic of finding a book that no one's heard of. And then you just go, I need you to read this. I need you to read this story. I think this would be a wonderful movie even about the friendship between these two and how Shobha has to navigate that there is such a gap in economics and in wealth and how she wants to help. And then if she helps, it's really about people need money. And it's very weird for her to experience that they don't want her kindness. They want her money. Like, help sponsor me to get another cow. My cow is sick. If my cow dies, I lose business. And it's a very different... It's like a humbling universe. It's a humbling experience because when I think of like what I do and I'm trying to donate food to a soup kitchen or I'm trying to donate food to a food pantry, it's a very different experience because you donate on your own terms essentially. But in this book, like the people around her have very specific needs and a lot of it is just financials. I need money. And do you become like a money lender? Like that, there's a lot of opinions and traditions around raising money and loaning money. Like I remember my dad was not the kind of like my dad would loan money if you needed it, but it always felt weird. It always felt more official to get a loan from a bank. But a bank's not going to loan money to someone who needs to literally buy a cow because she gives out fresh milk. Like it's not like she has like a UPC and a barcode and a way to track sales taxes. Do you know what I mean? But this was fantastic. It's delightful. It's lighthearted. But with a lot of good learnings in it. It didn't feel bogged down by economic woes and economic depressions, but it was still very enlightening and fun to read. Next up is a book that was recommended or I learned about through Gastropod, a wonderful culinary podcast that approaches food through the lens of science and history. The Poison Squad, one chemist's single-minded crusade for food safety and at the turn of the 20th century by Deborah Blum. I did a full book duos comparing this book to another book all about food safety and ingredients. So at the heart of this book is all about this team's journey and desire to really have the medical and scientific research backing behind what is going into our food, adulterated food. in the early days of mass industrialization, people were putting embalming fluids in our food to make them still look fresh at the market. And it really took this squad that was led by Dr. Harvey Washington Wiley, a chemist, to really say, like, no, we need to know what this does to our people. And the Poison Squad were quite literally volunteers who lived on a compound for months, and they were subjugated, essentially to poison. They willingly ate poison so that we could discover where the thresholds were, intolerances were for adulterating our food. And at the time, these were people that were coming back from the war, or they needed a job, and in their minds, they were getting 3 meals a day and a safe place to live, but you were eating poison. It was such a riveting and exciting book, and it really also shows the corruption of the government and how big businesses will pay to discredit studies. I think even in modern times today, I think the statistic most recently is 87% of consumers want more transparency in their food and are willing to pay more to know where their food comes from. But what we're seeing in the market is a lack of transparency, and that's because big corporations are lobbying and helping to protect their businesses, because they could be taking, they'll lose margin if they have to move over to all natural or organic. Not that those terms even have very strict guidelines in general, but this was a really, really interesting book. It's definitely scientific. I'm not a chemist. Like, I don't have a lot of experience in that world. I think I took like AP Bio and that was it. I did not take AP Chemistry, way too hard for me. But it was really riveting, and I'm so glad that it came up on Gastropod's bibliography. They had done a whole 1-hour episode about food adulteration. They talked about Dr. Wiley and this book, and I just had to go read more about it. It was just that captivating. And the final book of this year that blew my socks off, and I had a very good feeling that nothing was going to beat this book for me this year. Usually I just know in my gut, and that is Crying in H Mart, the memoir by Michelle Zauner. This started as a article in, I think, the New Yorker, that now has expanded into this full memoir. And it's from the indie rock musician known as Japanese Breakfast, which is, by the way, up for a Grammy this year. Heck yeah. An unflinching, powerful story of family, food, grief, and love. And this is about Michelle coping with the loss of her mother that she's lost to cancer, and reconnecting with food and her mother through food. And it might just be that when I read it, I was only a couple months into having lost my own father to cancer, and also having a desperate need to know his family recipes and food, which I know a couple Persian dishes, but I admit I don't know many, and it's something I still struggle with, and a guilt I struggle with. And this book had me ugly cry. Like, I was weeping. It was very powerful, and haunting is the word that comes to mind. Unflinching is really the right word for this book. It punches you in the gut, and then once you catch your breath, punches you again. But it is beautiful, and it is powerful, and I am so glad I read it. If I could recommend any book to you this year, please read this one. Okay, this concludes the 9 top books I read in 2021. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this list. Are you going to pick any of these up? Have you read any of these? I would love to know. Make sure you hit like and subscribe on the way down there, and make sure you follow me on Instagram so you can see more behind the scenes footage about my world and the Read It and Eat subscription box. I hope you're well, happy holidays, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.